Welcome to Writing on Wednesdays, where I give advice on tips on writing. This week I'll be switching gears a little bit and I'll be talking about publishing. In this video, I'll be talking about the differences between traditional publishing and self-publishing, pros and cons for both of them, and the first steps that you need to take no matter which route you plan on going with. So here's again joining me in this video, but he's just chilling in the back. You might see him moving around, but he's just hanging out. Traditional book publishing is when a publisher offers the author a contract and in turn prints, publishes, and sells your book through booksellers and other retailers. The publisher essentially buys the right to publish your book and pays you royalties from the sales. Definition from Writer's Digest. Large publishing houses, their imprints, as well as smaller boutique presses are all parts of traditional publishing. Self-publishing is the publication of media by its author without the involvement of an established publisher. The term usually refers to written media, such as books and magazines, either as an e-book or as a physical copy using print-on-demand technology. Definition from Wikipedia. Before e-books and e-retailers, self-publishing could be very hard to do. You had to have a lot of upfront money to pay for the printing of all your books, and then you had to find brick-and-mortar retailers that were willing to carry self-published books. And even now, it's very difficult to find retailers that have shelf space for your books. Part of that is just because of the competitive nature of the book industry, but it's also about contracts and placements that they have with the publishing houses about where books will be placed and where books will be. So prior to recent years, it was basically unless you were someone who was really wealthy, who already had a big following, it could be very difficult. But now with ebooks and e-publishing, it is really even the platform where it's a lot more financially accessible to the average person. So just to touch a little bit on my experience and my histories with traditional publishers and self-publishers, is I started self-publishing 11 years ago, and I really took off. I had a lot of sales. I was one of the first independently published authors to sell 1 million books on Kindle. So I have had a lot of success with self-publishing. After that, I got picked up by a traditional publisher. That was St. Martin's Press, which is an imprint of Macmillan Publishers, which is one of the big one of the big publishers. I don't know how many there are anymore. The industry has changed dramatically in the past 11 years. It really has. I have had successes with my traditional publisher also. I've had books make the New York Times bestseller list, and I've had books that have been that have sold well and have been well reviewed. So I've had experiences on both sides. In full transparency, I didn't re-up with my publisher, and I'm going to be going back to self-publishing this year. My last book that I self-published was in 2016, so it's been a few years, and stuff has probably definitely changed since I was there. I've known for over a year that I was going to go back to self-publishing this year, and so I've had time to think about it and to do more research and trying to get up to date with what's going on, but I haven't actually gone back into it yet, so I might be a little rusty, but I think that the information that I know is still helpful. One of the biggest differences between self-publishing and traditional publishing is the amount of work that you'll have to do. With a traditional publisher, there are tons of people there who work, and all their jobs are to make books better, and a lot of them will be at your disposal. That doesn't mean that every book is given the exact same treatment, however, so keep that in mind. The best-selling books and books that they're projected to be bestsellers are going to be treated with more time and consideration than books that are not projected to be bestsellers. So that doesn't mean that it's not exact treatment. However, everyone there is going to have, all the books are going to have professional editing. They're going to have some placement probably. I mean, you really have to look at your contract and go over it to make sure that you're getting what you think you're getting, but there is going to be production staff there. You're not going to have to worry about figuring out the margins for your books, which can be a thing that you have to worry about with self-publishing. You can get really frustrated and stuck trying to get it uploaded so it doesn't look like alphabet soup. And that's not an issue that you'll have to worry about, usually, I would hope, with a traditional publisher. The other considerations are cost. To start with, self-publishing is a lot more costly. In the back end, you get more money. They're just the reverse. They're flipped. It's basically at traditional publishing, you get more money up front, but a lot of books don't earn out on their advances. And that means that you basically got all the money that you're going to get for that book right up front. Some of my books have earned out on their advances, but not all of them. I'm sorry if this book has a lot of my allergies have kind of been acting up, so I'm a little sneezy. With self-publishing, you'll have to carry all the upfront costs. That means editing, all of the marketing, all of the book covers, interiors, Editing, that's the biggest one. Some of the things with self-publishing you can do yourself, like formatting is something that you can figure out yourself. You could possibly even figure out cover arts, but that's something that you're going to have to spend time learning how to do and try to make sure that it looks the best that it can. And so you'll still have to put time equity in it, even if it's not financial equity. But these are things that a publisher would do for you. For traditional publishing, the standard royalty rate for hardcover and paperback books is 8% to 15% roughly. And so that's your amount of the royalty that you're getting off the list price of the books. The ebook, I don't know exactly what ebooks are now, but ebooks are a larger percentage. I think they might be 20 to 40% with your traditional publisher, but I don't actually know for sure. I'd have to look at my contact name, and then I just know what mine is. With self-publishing, the royalty rate that you keep is much higher. It's between like 30 and 75%. But it's much a larger piece of the pie that you get to keep, and therefore you can price your books a lot lower and still make a lot more money. For example, a self-published book that costs $2.99, you'll make more money per book than you would a paperback that costs $9.99 with a traditional publisher. But where publishers really have kind of the boon, and why so many authors are willing to give up, so much of the royalty pie, is the marketing that publishers can have, the shelf space they can get you in brick and mortar stores that is near impossible for self-published authors to get in, and also that the relationships they have with librarians and booksellers, and this know-how in the community and the industry they have is a lot. They're also able to do things, really coordinated productions, really easily. They can team up with various like book boxes and bookstagrammers and have like all these things. They also can make really nice luxurious trailers. I mean, there's a lot of stuff that my publisher did to promote my books that would have been unfeasible or impossible for me to do on my own. Well, self-published paperback books, the royalty, the markup rate is much smaller. Most of my books I make like 50 cents to $1 per sale, even though that the books are priced at $10. And that's just because with the self-publishing print on demand, that's how the costs end up being. There you can get them cheaper if you buy them in bulk, and then you could sell them at events or things like that. But that's something that you have to look into and decide how you want to work that out. One of the biggest upshots, though, with self-publishing is obviously the amount of control. You have complete control over everything, for better or worse. You can decide on names, on covers, on price points. You can decide to unpublish it if you want. You can decide what day you're going to publish it. You can decide how you want to serialize it. You can decide anything that you want without anyone telling you differently. And that is great. But that also means it gives you a chance to walk into pitfalls a bit, because you don't have a publisher there to help suggest that things go a different way. But publishers are also kind of risk adverse. They're in an industry that costs a lot of money. And I think that these old entertainment industries that have been around, that have a lot of bulk and overhead, like the movie industry, the television industry, the music industry, all of them can be really risk adverse because of the amount of money they have, and because blockbusters aren't actually guaranteed, but blockbusters are also expected. Everything is supposed to be a bestseller in a blockbuster, but not everything can be, and that can make it difficult for people who are more mid-list. I feel like I'm more of a mid-list author. I think that I struggled to fit in as a bestseller with a traditional publisher, but I was selling really well as sorry. He couldn't figure out how to get up there. I don't know if as more of a mid-list author, I don't know if a traditional publisher is the right place for me or my books. I think that my books might sell better at lower price points. I mean, I would say that the biggest things that I enjoy about self-publishing, or the biggest pros I have, is the complete creative control, the ability to set your own price point, and the ability to decide when you're going to publish. Price point and deciding when you publish are pretty close to being out of your hands when you're with the publisher, and the complete creative control. You obviously have some creative control, but you don't have complete. And it's not like I didn't feel stymied by my publisher, but I couldn't just do whatever I wanted whenever I wanted. You're in this relationship, and especially I feel like being contracted for books is something that is different, because you sell a book and it isn't published for 18 months later or longer. I like the freedom a lot of self-publishing, But I also find it scary. It's like working without a net. It was nice having with a traditional publisher, you know that you've got people backing you up. You also have a lot of eyes on it and a lot of hands on it, so they're checking for stuff. They'll be likely to notice issues. A publishing house is full of people who want to make a book better, and so that's great to have all these people who can put in like little ideas and big ideas and make it better. Traditional publishing can be harder to break into than self-publishing, in that basically it is possible for anyone to just go up and upload a book and put it on the internet, but that doesn't mean it's sell. Both of them getting in front of readers' eyes can be very difficult on either end. So that is something to keep in mind. If you're talking about actually finding readership, it can be difficult in both avenues. That doesn't mean it's impossible or that you should give up on either one just because they're difficult. But you should really look at both of them and see what the benefits are, what you want, what you need, and kind of go from there. So the pros of traditional publishing are: you'll have a team of people working on your book to make it the best that it can be, including editors, marketing, cover designers. You'll be able to get placement in bookstores and book catalogs that you likely won't be able to get as a self-published author. It'll be more difficult to get. And it doesn't cost you anything up front. In fact, you get paid up front. Cons for traditional publishing are less say in the creative control, no say in the price point, smaller royalties. You're still going to be expected to do some marketing. The pros for self-publishing include complete creative freedom, larger royalty, you have a say in every aspect of the books, including price points, and it's more accessible. Cons for self-publishing are it costs a lot of money up front. You're doing it completely on your own, so every aspect of this falls on your shoulders, and you don't have any help with marketing, no placement for shelves, any of that kind of stuff. You are on your own. If you're interested in publishing, you need to sit down and look at what your goals are realistically, what you think you can handle, what you know you definitely can't handle, and try to see which one aligns better with you. You shouldn't just choose one because you think it's easier than the other. You should actually look and see which is the better fit for you and your book. So here are the first steps. If you're thinking of going with a traditional publisher, the most important thing is finding an agent. Most traditional publishers will not look at unagented work. So that means you have to find an agent to represent you in your books. There's lots of agents that you can find and find everything about them to find one that will be a good match for you in your books. You need to work on your query letter, which is basically a pitch that you send a prospective agent. And you also need to work on merely polishing the first 30 pages of your manuscript, because that's usually what prospective agents will ask for. So make your first 30 to 50 pages the best they can be. The whole book should be good, but really, really polish the first 30 to 50 pages. And then when you get that all together, you can start submitting to an agent. If you are self-publishing, you need to do research. That's the very first thing, is I think research more in depth about publishing and find out everything that you can about self-publishing. This is just an intro video. There's a lot, and I'm planning on doing more in the future, but there's a lot more information that I can touch on in this short video. You also need to start setting up your budget, what you can afford to spend on a book. To self-publish well, I think it costs between $2,500 and $10,000. You can spend a lot more on that if you want to go really crazy with marketing and everything. But I think to do it well, $2,000 is like on the low end, because you definitely have to hire an editor, a cover artist, and you probably want to pay for some marketing. At a minimum, that stuff can set you around $2,000. You're gonna, like, for me, for example, in addition to the people that I have working on the books, I also like to usually buy some copies of my book, paperbacks of my book, and have them ready so I can have them for giveaways and things like that. So then I have to have copies of the paperback on hand, which can actually get pretty expensive pretty quickly. I mean, 10 copies of my book can cost $100. And that's just 10 copies for 10 book bloggers. And you really ideally want to have a lot more book bloggers. So really think about what your budget is and try to figure out where you want to spend the budget. The most important things, the biggest things that I think you can put your money into is your editor and your cover artist. Those are the two most important areas. So make sure that you have money for those areas, and you can find other ways to make some of the other stuff work. And finally, make sure that you have beta readers. You're not going to have a team of people already assembled like you do with a traditional publisher. So you need to kind of assemble your own team. That's the idea here, is you find your own people that you like. So try to get involved in the writing community and other writers and get in contact with them, because you do want as many eyes as possible as you can before you publish the book. Thank you for tuning in, and I hope I've been helpful. I'll be back next week with more writing tips. I'll be talking more about the publishing industries and a little bit about marketing. So if you're into that sort of thing, be sure to tune in. So for me and Sawyer, thank you for watching, and until next time, happy writing.